Well, hello and welcome. We are live from the heartland, and so are you. Sorry for that little extra delay. Had just a tiny little issue with Rockfin connecting up, and we are live on our main go-to platform tonight of Rockfin. We're also going to be live on the Evangelical Hour YouTube platform and on the Flee the Watchtower YouTube platform, and of course Twitter as well, Twitch, and also on Odyssey. Nice to see Mind Over Magic. Nice to see Super Galactic. Nice to see Dagger, Ruby, and I believe Ruby has already weighed in, believe it or not, with the big $20 tip. Thank you so much, Ruby. And David McDonald last night, was it last night? Night before last, with a $10 tip, says he saw some cat eyes in the mirror during the Halloween deprogram. So thanks so much for that. We really appreciate it. And we got a special night tonight. We have Jeran from Jeranism in the house. Really looking forward to that one. It's going to be a very interesting time, a very good time. And we're looking forward to trying to do, if we can, some YouTube friendly content. We'll see how long we can get away with that. Most of you know who Jeran is. Most of you know what Jeran's all about. Me, I do, but I don't. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about him. And I'm looking forward to having a free-ranging and a wide-ranging conversation tonight. There's not enough conversation going on. And without any further delay, let me welcome in a man that I think I can call my friend. His name is Jeran. He's from the Jeranism channel. And there he is, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, I see. Now I'm going to be small in your picture. That's probably the problem, huh?
Looks like you're a little smaller, but you're larger than life, Jeran, so it doesn't matter.
Works. All right. And I'm going to fix your little shape, and then I'm going to try to go live on my channel. We're going to be simulcasting, if that will work.
Excellent. What's the fancy term for that? There's another fancy term. Sam Tripoli used to always say it, and I can't remember what it was called. But it's basically just broadcasting each on your same channel at the same time.
That sounds very official right there. I would go with that one.
It does sound good. Hey, were you at the recent Flattoberfest?
I was not. I've never been to one because it's on the East Coast and I'm over here on the West Coast. So I just haven't been to one. And then we had a baby 2 years ago. So, I had an excuse. No, I'm just kidding. Just wasn't able to go these last 2 years. So next year's supposed to be in Vegas.
Really?
Yep. So I'll definitely get that one.
Jeran, what would happen if I showed up at Flattoberfest?
People would love you.
You really think so?
Well, they let me there, so.
Well, I think sometimes I wonder if I'd have to fight my way out.
I think you'll be okay. I think you'd enjoy yourself. It's a very good group of like-minded people, and there's just no drama, which is pretty rare for YouTube. It always seems like there's some sort of drama going on in the YouTube world.
Absolutely. So, Jeran, for the few people that don't know who you are, can you tell everybody who you are? And I want to know this one. Can you tell us what Jeranism is?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm on Rockfin now. I was on YouTube. I'm still on YouTube, but you know how it is there that we're getting censored and shadow banned. And I talk a lot about the shape of the Earth, which is also something that they're not friends of. So you can't find it in search. If you search flat Earth, you're just going to find a bunch of garbage. Right. So, came over with Rockfin last year. Have enjoyed it. I like that they don't take down our stuff. Pretty much let us speak, which is great. Only thing is, obviously, we're probably speaking to the choir. We're preaching to the choir over here, whereas at YouTube, at least you're able to get some new eyes on you. So it's good to keep YouTube around if you can. So that's where you can find me. Jeranism is the name of the channel on both. And as far as the name, when my wife and I kind of became disillusioned with religion, we kind of decided to go back from the very beginning. We just said, we're just going to wipe the slate clean. We don't want to have any beliefs unless we can prove it for ourselves. That was kind of our thought process going in. And so the idea of picking a channel name was, I was kind of like trying to think of something. And then I thought of, well, it's my own religion, right? I think we got too caught up in believing what every other man tells us to believe. And nobody believes anymore at all what they come to on their own, right? It's always, right. This pastor told me, this priest told me, this school teacher told me, this professor told me, or this scientist told me. And people aren't comfortable in their own skin anymore to just say, no, I don't believe that. And that was really where I was going, because there were so many things like atoms, what's inside of an atom, that I just thought was hilarious because we're told that the atom's the smallest thing that there is, right? And then they tell you what's inside of it. Well, that all of a sudden is a problem. It's like, well, isn't an atom something that can't be divided? And they're like, yes. Well, then how are you going to tell me what's inside of it? So little things like that I don't hear anybody say, because heaven forbid that's a big no-no, is to question science. How dare you? And I wanted to be able to do those things. I wanted to be able to question the things I want. And then if it is so apparent, the answer, then bring it to me. Show me that that's the answer. Have some scientists step up and say, here's why you're wrong about this, or the shape of the earth. Here's why you're wrong. And so that's what it is. It's Jeranism. So you would be Jeffism, because your beliefs are your own religion. It's you. It's just you. It's your beliefs. It's how I think we should go through life. We got caught up in this. We have to be in this group or that group. And I think when you're in a group, I don't know if you know this, but I went to a all boys Catholic Jesuit high school, graduated from there 1998. And I became disillusioned with school because I was raised Catholic Christian. Then I went to school, and they started teaching me biology and chemistry and the Big Bang evolution. And then right after that, I would have religious studies class. So I said, this is ridiculous. Why are they teaching me both? And I kind of got disillusioned with school and barely made it out. But now looking back, I think it was a huge benefit because I see what the Jesuits are up to. What they're up to is they want you in a belief system, and they don't even care which one it is. They don't care if you get hooked into the science side, or they don't care if you get hooked into the religious side. Either of those people don't have their own beliefs. Both of those people are easily controllable. Both of those people are predictable. So they know exactly how you're going to act in certain situations, exactly how you're going to believe. And so the scariest thing for, I think, the powers that should not be, is people in the middle. This is why they have left versus right, because no matter who you are, you're going to have some element of your belief system that matches more one or the other. So then you associate your side with that, right? So even though we all hate that left-right paradigm, if I were to ask you, you would say, oh, you're more on the right. It's like, I'm more on the right, but we hate that left-right kind of deal, right? But that once you've assigned yourself to one of those sides, you kind of have your beliefs decided for you, because you can't be on the right and be pro-abortion. It just doesn't go well for you, right? So there's like, you have to be what they tell you to be. And I think the scarier position is to be in the middle. So I like being there. I don't like to really adopt something and just say, oh, this is 100% true, because we should always be open to new information coming in, right? And there's constantly new information. It's kind of hard to find nowadays because a lot of people just spit the same old mainstream nonsense. But that's why I like your show. My wife and I listen to your show. And it's because you're going to always present something new, something interesting that we didn't really get. And there's so many things that you've shown us that we're just like, you're saying the same thing we are. How did I miss this? How did we miss this? And you also are very good at your thumbnails and your titles, because so many times I've seen your title, I'm like, oh shit, what's Jeff gonna like? One's Jesus is real. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And then the next one was what'd you say the other day? The Earth isn't flat. I'm like, oh boy, now what's this guy got to say? But then you made a points that I'm like, oh, I agree with that. I agree with that. That it's hard to just state that. I wish if I could do it all over again, I would just remain a globe skeptic, just because the word flat Earth has obviously been taught to people as the dumbest belief you can have, which again, if you know anything about what we've been taught in this government and the lies we've been told, whatever they've told you is the dumbest belief is probably the smartest. They're just, it's everything's so upside down and backwards that, it wouldn't surprise me if smoking was good for you.
It's a complete inversion, and intentionally so. And one thing that you'll do that I do, and not many people do it, and my wife wishes that I didn't do it, but sometimes I've noticed you'll just get so fed up with an individual and some of the things that they're saying and doing that you'll actually take to the air and name the individual and say, this is nonsense. You got to stop. If they'll talk to you, you'll talk to them. If they won't, you'll still go on and talk about it. And I will do that. And it's not something that I really like doing. I'd love to just talk to people and work things out, but it doesn't seem to be possible. But a lot of people say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You're creating drama. You're cutting people down. What is your thought process as you go through and consider something like that?
So I don't think that I know of that. If you're not talking about somebody like a Neil deGrasse Tyson or something like this, if you're talking about another YouTuber, basically, or
yeah, I mean, I there's been times where, I've, I don't want to name names and give free publicity, but you've had shows about this person's gone off the rails, they've lost it, blah, blah, blah.
So always when that happens, I'm always on the defensive. What I mean by that is I don't care what other people do on their channels. YouTube is meant to be for the person who's doing the broadcasting, right? And the way you find out whether your ideas have any merit or whether people like it is you get up there, you speak your mind, and then people either follow your channel or they don't. So I don't mind if people want to talk Christianity, if people want to talk globe Earth. I don't care. They don't even bother me. Just go over to your side and do your thing. But when it becomes a problem is when everybody has to attack you for what you're saying, which frustrates me, because if you're going to attack me, you better bring good evidence to where I look at what you're saying and go, oh man, the guy's got a point. But every time I'm attacked, it's always because somebody's straw manning you or somebody's making something up. Recently, somebody's on their channel calling me an atheist. And it's like, don't do that, because what you're doing is you're speaking to your audience who's religious and you're calling me an atheist. Well, immediately they hate me. And they're not even giving me a chance to say my piece. I'm not an atheist at all. I believe that there is a creator. So things like that. And then when that happens too much, I just have to, I have to call them out. So it's maybe a personal problem. I get that people are like, oh, why don't you just ignore it? Just ignore it. Right. And I probably should. But at the same time, it's very difficult for me to do. It's very difficult if somebody's going to attack me, at least because it's hard enough. I'm a flat earther, for goodness sakes. Right. So it's hard enough to be in the position I'm in. And lately I've been kind of going hard against the Bible and Christianity for a specific reason that's not really working out well. But what I mean by that is I'm almost demonizing my own audience. And I know that, but the truth is more important to me than maintaining an audience or building an audience. And I don't think that's true for many people. I think many people on YouTube will cater to their audience, will start to kind of puff smoke up their ass, kind of give them what they want. And I understand that that's a smart move. And if you're looking for donations and things like that, that's smart. Not smart is what I do, which is go anti-science and then go anti-Bible, because that's the two camps that people are pushed into, right? So how many people are actually in the middle that want to listen to me bash both those sides? Very, very few. So I'm actually lucky at the people that I even have watching me that I can still get 8,000, 9,000 a stream, because it used to be more than that. But then when you piss people off, they just get frustrated. They don't want to watch you anymore. So that tells me too that people want their beliefs reinforced more than anything, right?
Well, Jeran, you better be careful, or you'll wind up where I am, outstanding in your own field, all by yourself.
That's why I was going to say, Jeran and Jeff finally together, together at last. No, because I that's what I respect about you, is I know that what you're doing is not helping your numbers. I know that it's not going to make you rich. I know that it's not going to make you a friend of most people. So that tells me at least that what you're doing is your own beliefs. You're not blowing smoke up people's ass. You're not, and again, you're a former pastor. So the kind of people too that I don't like are the people out there who say, oh, you just don't want to look into the other side, or you just, and it's like, no. We already changed our opinions. Right. I was already a believer in the globe. I was already a Christian. And so I've come out of that. Now, the people that go against you, those are people that have been stuck in their belief systems forever. And they're trying to act like you're the one who can't see the truth. It's like, no, I already changed my position. I'm willing to change it again too. My biggest thing about the Christianity right now is simply this. If you boil it down to one thing, is the God of the Old Testament worship worthy? Is the God of the Old Testament somebody that you would think with your morals should be worshipped? And in my mind, the absolute answer, without a doubt, is no. So if that's the case, then you look at the New Testament and you have to ask yourself, well, is Jesus that God? Because if he is, then I dismiss Jesus outright. If he's not, well, then the problem becomes the Bible is not true then, because the Bible's trying to associate them together. It's the New Testament, the Old Testament. So that kind of leaves me in a place where I'm like, no, I don't think that there's any way to reconcile that. So when people want to come at me and they want to say, you don't understand the Bible, you're reading it out of context, I'm like, time out. Just explain to me why I'm wrong about the God of the Old Testament being a moral person. Now, that guy made by Jim Bob, who is like an Orthodox Christian, he's been going at me and saying over and over again that we don't have the right to question God. And I'm like, hold on a second. I said, with our morals, with morality that I think God gave me, I don't have the right to look at a book and say, this does not match the morals that I was given, and therefore this isn't God. Like, that's our only defense. What else do we have, right? If somebody gives us a book and tells us this is written by God, well, your only choice to figure out whether it is or isn't is pretty much to look into it, see what they're saying God did, and then decide for yourself whether or not that matches the morals that you feel like are inside you. So I always hear from everybody, oh, how would you know what's good and bad if it wasn't for the Bible? It's like, you've never read the Bible if you say that. There's a lot of stuff in there that just shouldn't be in there. And there's, advocating for slavery and how to sell your daughter into sex slavery and killing of babies and killing of nations. And certainly seems like the God of the Old Testament is racist and has a favorite people and is jealous, all kinds of things that don't jive with me. There's no God that's jealous. It doesn't make any sense to me. The
Jaron,
creator, no.
have you ever asked the question, is Jesus worthy of worship?
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I guess no, for a couple main reasons. I mean, he says that if I don't love him more than I love my mother and father or my son and daughter, then I'm not worthy of him. So right away off the bat, anybody who says, no, I do love Jesus, then I think that person needs to probably, head towards a mental institute, because your mother gave birth to you, clothed you, fed you,
Yes.
housed you, and you've never met the other guy. So to me, it's like a no-brainer. And why would God expect that? That's a ridiculous expectation. And then, Jesus in Revelation saying he'll kill some girls' children. You've seen that, right? Revelation 2. So that's not very, they say he's not, he never, said a bad word. And then you just have the problem with him saying, turn the other cheek, and love your enemies. But then he tells everybody, I'm coming back to destroy all my enemies. Well, that's
Yes.
So
Jaron, would it surprise you if I told you I was going back to church this coming Sunday?
No, because I heard you were going to. You're looking for a sidewalk, I know.
Yeah, I got this sign here, and it says, Jesus kills.
Prove me wrong.
Prove me wrong.
That's going to go over real well.
And I've got a table set up there. I'm going to have some coffee. I might even put some donuts up there, Jeran, because, Christians love donuts.
They do.
And I'll invite him to come in and, sit down and have a little talk. And I've got a hot, sexy camera person that's going to go ahead and video it for us. So how do you predict that'll go?
I don't think well. But they might not be very, I don't know how confrontational they'll be. It's not the Westboro Baptist Church. So I don't know if, the good thing is about most Christians is that most Christians are good people. And I believe that they're good people inside. Now, because of their belief and their need to protect it and stand up for it, sometimes they come across as terrible. Right. The ones who told me I'm going to go to hell are these ones. But, recently I did a show on my channel called, should I, call and tell me why I should worship YHWH. And the amount of calls that made me just almost sick to my stomach. These are men, they're supposed to be men, who call in and say, you have to worship him because he created you. No matter, and I'm like, no matter what? They're like, yeah. I'm like, what are you talking? So if God came down and started kicking little kids in the nuts, that we're just supposed to, because we don't understand his ways. And I mean, this is a ludicrous belief. That I believe this is a test. I believe this is part of the test while we're here. You're here because there's a lot of lies everywhere. And if you can navigate your way through and not fall for deception, and I believe trust the God that's inside you, which I believe we each have a piece of God inside of us, that voice, that morality, even if you think of Pinocchio is a great little allegory for being a puppet. If you're a puppet on strings, you don't have your own, you're not a real boy. And then what you do is when you learn to trust the conscience that's inside you, which is Jiminy Cricket, JC, Jesus Christ, it's kind of the same idea, these kind of allegories. But when you trust that voice inside you, then I believe that you become a real person and you can see the truth. Let me ask you this, because this is something I've kind of...
And by the way, Revelation 19:5 says that Jesus is coming back to kill every Gentile, just so you know.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard you say that. Here's my thought, though. Do you think there's any chance, and I don't know why I believe this, because it's not really based on evidence, maybe a little bit, but is there any chance that Jesus was a person who came, who spoke out against the Old Testament God, who was against that God and telling people the kingdom of God is inside you and that we are all members of God? And then the Jews got very upset at that because he's basically spitting on their God. So they killed him. And then they co-opted him and basically said, let's make this guy God on earth. So that basically here's what happens if you did that. If the Jews did that, then you would have a choice. Either worship YHWH, in which case you are worshiping the Jewish God. And if they told you to go spread the word, well, that's what happened, right? The Catholics are the one who brought the word to the new world. So basically you have Catholics spreading the word of the Jewish God. And then if people chose instead to worship God, Jesus, well, then they go directly against the God of the Old Testament, who says there is no other God but me. I am the only God. So in essence, it kind of fulfills the Jewish idea, which is you're sinning because you're going against the rules of God, which are clearly in the Old Testament. So if you're spreading the Old Testament, aren't you reading the rules that say, worship no God but me? I'm one, I'll never be another. I'll never change. I mean, the God of the Old Testament was vindictive, jealous, murderous, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And then Jesus comes, who's the complete opposite. And yet Christians tell me they're the same people. The only people who tell me they're different is Jewish people.
Well, Jared, I would question if Jesus really is, pardon me, the exact opposite of, Yahweh, because Jesus even said, and I'll have to look up the reference, I've got it written down.
Mhm.
Jesus said, all of my enemies that will not follow me, bring them here and slay them before me.
Right.
And then Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace, I came to bring a sword. And then he gave the discussion about how he was going to break up families. And then he said in Revelation 19:5, it's even the words of Christ in red, which I would say is the blood red of children, but that's just me giving you an opinion. He says in Revelation 19:5, 19:15, if you look it up in the Greek, Jesus is coming back to destroy the nations. That word nations in Greek means the nations as opposed to Israel. So everybody that's not Israel, Jesus is coming back to destroy, which I find very ironic because those are the people that are worshiping him. So is he really that much different than the Old Testament God? And I think that I can prove to you from the text alone, and that's a problem because Christians don't believe the text.
Right.
I think I can prove to you irrefutably from the text that Jesus is Yahweh.
And I think that they would have tried to write it that way. So, I mean, for me, I just at this point have to admit that there's no way a creator God would write a book. If he did, the book would be much different. It would be far different. So to me, I pretty much chalk the whole thing up to being a deception. I mean, Romans 13 is probably the number one thing for me that caught me right from the beginning. Was it clearly says that all government is placed there by God.
Exactly.
And that alone, anybody who believes that, and they'll try and dance around it and make up things and say, one of the crazy thing about that verse is if you always go to the Bible Hub, if you go to Bible Hub, there's not a version that's any different.
There's not. They're all the same.
Yeah. Sometimes they'll say like the higher powers. Sometimes it'll say government. But regardless, you can read and know exactly what it's talking about. It's saying that any governor, anybody put into any human authority, you are to respect that human authority or you go against God. And that's straight horseshit.
Have you ever said that to a Christian person that says they believe the Bible?
Absolutely. And they still fight. They still fight you. They'll say, you don't understand the context. He was talking to the people back then. I'm like, then why is it scripture? Why would it be included?
I had a conversation very similar to that with the person that was a speaker at the last Flattoberfest.
Mhm.
And they say they believe the Bible, but you show them the text and they say, no, it doesn't mean that.
Right.
You're interpreting it wrong. But wait a minute. The Bible itself says it is of no private interpretation. You're just supposed to read what the language says. So I get very irritated.
You could bring her up Romans 13. There's no way that you can read it any other way. It's just not possible.
And what bothers me, Jeran, is that I have more faith in the text than Christians do. And you can give me an answer to this. I think I might know the answer. Why aren't any of them willing to come on my channel or have me on their channel and just have a straight up I don't even want to debate. I just want a dialectic discussion. Here's what I think Romans 13 is saying. You show what you think Romans 13 is saying. I question you, you question me. Let the people decide. Why can't we do that? YouTube is supposed to foster communication, but all it's done is foster didactic, arrogant assholes that just want to get on and say what they believe and have people accept it.
Yeah, no, because I guess there's no excuse. I mean, what can somebody really say? You have to make something up, and they know they're going to be called out for it. So it has to go to, well, we don't know what it's about, or we don't know God's ways. We don't know why it's in there. Everything isn't an answer for me that's going to make me believe. I mean, that is clearly written by governments. It says in there, pay taxes to who taxes is due. Yeah. That's all it says. So what if the government came out tomorrow and said 99% income tax? I hope Christians know that you would have no choice but to adhere to that, or you go against God. How about where it says
you're misinterpreting it?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, what about wearing masks? I ask Christians all the time, did you wear a mask? Hell no. Did you get a vaccine? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Okay. So what about this Romans 13 that says that if you go against your government, you go against God? The government was there telling you what to do, and you chose to make your own decision. And in that case, like, well, you don't understand what Paul was writing to was the people back then. Like, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that at all. It's clearly is talking.
Well, how do you know Romans 3:6, John 3:16 wasn't written just to the people back then?
Exactly. You're just going to, and that's the thing. The Bible becomes impossible to debunk if you can just say anything. Right. And that's what they do. They'll just say anything. They'll apply it to, oh, no, it doesn't mean that. Oh, it means it's written for a different time. Oh, we don't understand it. Oh, it's mistranslated. Oh, you have to go back to the Hebrew. If you go back to the Hebrew and you show it, oh, well, then you have to. So it's just a dance that you can never really win. And to me, if the Bible was divine, then it would be perfect. And that's how you would know that it was divine, because there would be no way to find errors. But there's more contradictions. And then you'll have people who tell you there's no contradictions. What?
I know.
There's like a contradiction every page. What do you mean? I mean, there's stories that are ridiculous, one after the other. My favorite, I don't know which gospel it's in, but there's one where it's telling the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. And literally the next chapter is Jesus feeding 4,000. And in both stories, the apostles act like they don't know what's going to happen. In the first story, they're like, Jesus, what are we going to do? There's all these people and we only have one basket of fish. And then next chapter is then he goes across the water and he sees a group of 3,000. And he only had one basket. And the apostles asked him, Jesus, whatever would we do? It's like, weren't you here yesterday? Didn't you hear the story about how I fed everybody? Why would you ask me again? But there's so many contradictions, like there is no love and fear, which I agree with. And then there's fear God. What? So am I not supposed
to? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom, Jeran.
All wisdom, yes. So again, it's I mostly see it as people that are very, very afraid. I'll use that word rather than the word I usually use on my channel. They're very afraid. They are scared to death of having eternal banishment. And so they choose instead to just say that they worship God and just say that they follow Jesus. And they don't even read the Bible. Some of them won't even read it. And they don't want to read it because they're afraid that you're going to be able to pick something out of it and they're going to make some bad decision to get off of it. And it's going to cost them eternity in hell. So I think that's why because they'll just say that. They'll be afraid. And I'm like, do you realize that if we saw a couple and the husband told his wife constantly, if you leave here, if you go look at any other man, I'm going to beat you senseless. And she ends up staying there, that's not impressive. There's nobody who's impressed by the fact that she's there, and he can't be impressed that she loves him, and she can't be impressed that he loves her. So it's just a disaster, that situation. That's what's going on, is that you have a God who's threatened people, that he's going to burn them in hell if they don't follow his exact rules. And so these people are following his exact rules and then saying they love him. Well, that's Stockholm syndrome. That's not love. That's love should be an open, and that's my whole thing about worship worthy, is I want to choose who I worship based off of their traits, not and based off the morals that I was given. And if God gave us morals and then felt like, oh, I'll go outside those morals and those people will still love me, then I don't think he was worthy of worship. So it's really simple for me. And I don't even think it's questionable anymore. And people will try and write me. I could show you this guy from last night who wrote me and says, you're misrepresenting Catholicism. I'm like, okay, hold on. Before we get into that, does Catholicism believe in YHWH is the God? He's like, did you read this creed? Do you know what the creed says? This, that? Like, you're not listening. This is very simple. We can be done with this conversation in 2 seconds, because once they tell me, yes, Catholicism believes in what, then I reject him. That's it. We can be done. We don't need to go on. I'm not trying to be, let's go on and on about this every day for the rest of my life. It's very simple. And it baffles me that nobody else can just say that nobody else can just realize we can take our morals, we can look at what God does and say, that's questionable. Read, Leviticus 5, when he's talking about what to do if you sin. You got to bring him a turtle dove, and then you got to break his neck in front of God. You've got to drip the blood 7 times, because 7, not 6, not 8. God's very superstitious. 7 times onto the altar. You have to wash your clothes, and then you have to go find a she-goat and then put your sins on the goat, send the goat out and kill it, and then you're forgiven of your sins. Anybody who's a parent realizes right away that is not how you teach people or children or anybody how to do anything. You are going to end up with worse people if you tell them that they can put their sins onto animals and then kill them. None of us would do that with our child. Our child comes home from curfew late and we're like, that's it. Go get a kitty cat. Go get a cat. Bring it back to me and break its neck. And I want blood sprinkled on the door. If anybody did that in life, they would be arrested and put in jail, rightfully so. So
Well, at
Why do
least you could have your kid have a great Netflix miniseries made about him, like the Dahmer series.
I couldn't watch that.
I couldn't either, bro. But
Yeah,
let me ask you one question before I
sure.
forget. Several times you've talked about someone that that is worship worthy. Have you ever considered the concept that maybe gods don't want our worship? And have you ever asked why do we feel compelled to worship?
I would say that I think that there's too much good in the world. Like everything that happens as far as like the fact that it's still here for one. I mean, like I tend to believe that there is a good God, one that is all good, that is now an all good God couldn't do much, right? I mean, they're just going to only be good. So I do think that you could separate yourself into 8 billion pieces, and you could experience things that a God would not even know could experience because they're all good. But I think they can step out of the timeless world into the time zone. They can create a world that we're all here. It was created, and I believe God is inside all of us. So I don't think I know you're a deist. I'm kind of the same in the fact that God does not operate through in the world other than through us, but it's our free will. So
I
God doesn't
agree.
actually do anything. So no God's going to step in and save a child who's running in front of a car. No God's going to heal your aunt Mary because she's sick.
Oh, I
Um,
got to tell you something about that, by the way. Go ahead.
did your aunt Mary get healed? No, I'm just kidding.
No, but when we just moved into a house, and I talked about it briefly before we came on air.
Mhm.
And Cynthia, the last thing she wants to do is tell somebody that I'm on YouTube because she doesn't want them to look it up and see some of my videos and oh, it's a guy down the street. So she told him I used to be a preacher of all things. Like, can you tell him I used to be in the Air Force? I'm retired from the Air Force. Tell him that.
Something
No, she
else.
told him I was a preacher. And the guy says, oh, he calls me up. He calls me over to the next day. And the poor guy's name is, I don't want to say his name, good guy. He's got brain cancer, Jeran. He's like, I know you used to be a preacher. Will you pray for me? And I'm
Oh
thinking,
yes.
oh, thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you so much. And I tell her, and she starts cracking up. She thinks it's hilarious. I didn't think it was that funny. Not that he had brain cancer, but just that I find myself in this situation. And
Right.
he's asking me to pray for him, Jeran. So what are you going to do? You're
You
going
did
to
it
pray for him, right?
as long as you did
Well,
it in the name of Jesus.
no, I didn't do it. I explained to him, I don't do Jesus anymore. And and he goes back to the doctor today to get his brain cancer cut out. They do the pre-operation. It was actually 2 days ago. They do the pre-operation X-ray, and it's gone, Jeran. There's no brain cancer, so the
Wow.
guy doesn't have to have his operation.
Look at you. I'm going to ask you for some help with my son then.
What
No,
about that, bro? I mean, what about that? I mean, so are you going to tell now? Oh, Darty's an atheist. Darty hates God. No, he doesn't. I just don't like your God.
right. There you go. That's it. And that's what they always say about me. I'm an atheist. And no, just because or they'll come in my chat the other day, I saw somebody say, well, Jeran, who created the world then? It's like the creator. Like, I don't know.
Exactly.
It's
It's
not
not hard.
difficult. It's not hard. No, my position is very simple and it's very straight up. And it's when I came to my own, I really think that we're here in a test. And I really think God is choosing the best people out of the bunch. Now, I've got a weird belief. I do believe in reincarnation a little bit
I
because
do too.
yeah, I've seen enough evidence that tells me that some people. Now, were we supposed to remember our past and maybe vaccines and oops, I forgot we're on YouTube.
Oops,
Maybe other
that's
things.
right.
Yeah, we can
Oh
come off there
well.
in a little bit. Maybe other things have been introduced that have erased that connection with the divine, possibly. Or maybe it's as simple as no matter what's thrown at us, it's really seeing which people can actually rise to the top because there's so many lies that come in so many different directions, and to just really put your foot down and say I'm not going to fall for the words of men is really hard for people to do, and it was
Yep.
the best thing that I ever did. And even if everything I believe when I die is wrong, as long as I came to it myself, I feel so much better. Than there's no way that the goal of life is to come here, read a book, sit and be complacent and wait for Jesus. It's
Absolutely.
insanity that people think that that's what the goal is here, that that's who God would think. Because, and here's the thing, my audience knows that just because you memorize something in school and repeat it doesn't make you smart. So we know that the people who get promoted through school are simply the order followers. They're the ones who are unquestioning. They're the ones who become the professors who teach the next generation. That this is kind of how this whole thing has gone on. We've seen it with doctors. We've seen it, the last couple of years mostly. So if we know that, then when we look at religions, then we have to understand that the same thing must be true. That if you're just believing what you've been taught and it's what you were grown up with, and then to make this whole kind of, you put your feet in the sand and you're just like, no, my religion's correct, yours is wrong. To me, and this is also quite clear, every single culture worships the same God. Every culture has a connection with the infinite. Every single person who's ever been born has a feeling inside them of, who's my creator? Was I created? And I think that alone, that question of who created me, is proof of the creator. I really think that that's put into us for a reason, because it's not like some people ever come around and just like, oh, I never even thought about that. No, people have all thought about it. Now, some have chosen, no, we are an evolution accident that, Darwin told us all. And then some other people come into the world thinking, no, I think I was created. So once you have that feeling, then whatever culture you're brought up in is who you usually worship, right? If you're brought up as a Christian or a Protestant or a Shinto or a Buddhist or a Muslim, it's basically based on your culture. And how I know that that's true is everybody who's told me they've got some story that proves Christianity, they all see Jesus, they all see God. Jesus come and helps them in some situation, or the Bible opens to a certain page and it coincides with their life, so they believe it.
Did you hear about the guy in the porch light the other night, Jeran? Did you catch that one?
No, what port light? Oh, wait. No. I guess I'm thinking of something else.
The same dude that, dodged David Weiss for a debate.
Oh, that guy.
He knew that Jesus was real because his porch light turned off and on all night long. So it's the God of the Holy Porch Light, the first church of the Holy Porch Light.
Blessed be his name. Yeah,
blessed be their name.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I mean, I've had Muslims who reach out to me and say, "Oh, you got to read the Quran. The Quran is the true book." And they say, "I know that because I've seen Muhammad. He's come to me. I've seen Allah." I'm like, "Okay," and then I've seen the jinn. It's like, okay, yeah, and the Christians have all seen demons. Yep. So I think what people have failed to realize is humans are so much more impressive than we know. That I believe if I went in the garage right now and painted a pentagram and lit some candles and read the Bible backwards, Satan might come. Now, that's just me conjuring that up. There's no being, there's no entity, but that's how amazing we are, that you are able to do that. So I think,
what, Jeran, just to back you up on that, I was a Christian. I was casting out demons in the name of Jesus. Then I got really understanding about the Hebrew roots, and I started casting them out in the name of Yeshua. And then there was a time where I was casting out demons in the name of Jeffrey Darty. And I've even cast out demons as all that is holy and righteous is my witness. I have cast out demons in the name of Mickey Mouse.
Well,
it's intention.
It's intention. And that's what people fail to. And so now you've got these wars between religions where they're arguing. I mean, God must be so ashamed, because it's really sad to see that they basically, everybody wants to be good. Nobody's really trying, and they believe these things just because they were taught, and they have these weird doctrines. I mean, I grew up Catholic, and I remember one time where my sister asked my mom, "Was the body and blood of Jesus, that's a symbol, right?" My mom's absolutely not. Absolutely. It is the actual physical body and blood of Jesus. And we would like laugh at her, and she would get really upset. We were like 12 and 10, we just laugh. And then one time she told us at Christmas, she like came in there all upset. And she, "I hear you guys talking about Jesus. What, you don't think Jesus is God?" And I said, "Well, I don't think he died on the cross and he didn't rise from the dead." And she's like, she was so ashamed of me. And she said, "If Jesus didn't die on the cross, I don't have a reason to live." And it's like, okay, what about your kids are right here? Like, you don't think that's right? But again, this is what it does. And I still got along with my mom great. And she's a good person. And I actually I think I'm a good person because of Christianity. Despite everything I went through, I believe that I'm better off than if I would have been raised atheist, I guess. But I don't know. You'll never know those things, right? Obviously, right. I was brought up to be a good person. I was a great child till 15. I was an altar server, head altar server. I served 150 funerals. I served 100 weddings. I worked inside the church with the priests, which taught me a lot. It showed me that they were one person on Sunday after Mass, out there shaking the hands, very solemn. People thought they were great. And then as soon as they come in the rectory, they're just regular guys. They go watch football. They curse. They get drunk. They're just regular people. And when I asked them questions like, "Do you talk to God?" They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Does God speak to you?" They're like, "No, I just feel his presence." I'm like, "Yeah, I feel his presence too, but does he speak? Why did you become a priest?" They're like, "Well, I'm giving up my life in exchange for, a better life in heaven." And you're like, okay, well, I guess that's fine. But they would be evil as well. We would have homeless people that would come to the door, and we're supposed to call the priest, and they would come down and hand them like a $5 Jack in the Box gift card, which nowadays won't get you a fries, but back then it did pretty well. But they would, I'd call them and say, "Hey, there's a homeless guy." And he'd say, "Tell him to get out of here." Like, whoa, okay. So I kind of quickly learned that priests aren't special. And in fact, they bothered me a little bit in the way that they were just weird, weird guys. They seemed a little bit off. And I never liked any of their answers. I don't know if you know this, but the Catholic priests, when they're doing this body into blood deal, they whisper something to themselves. And I would ask them all the time, what are you whispering to yourself? Like, I can't tell you. It's a secret. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, I don't know if anybody knows what exactly a Catholic priest whispers to themselves, and every Catholic priest does it. And I'll tell you one other story about something that caught me off guard. So my mom used to be head of liturgy and music, and so before church or after church for an hour or so, I was there in the building. So I'd run around the altar and go wherever I wanted through the pews or whatever. And I went to the altar and I was laying underneath it, looking up at it, and I saw this little little slider thing underneath the altar. Like, what is that? So there's a priest walking by. I said, "Hey, Father Matt, come here. Look at this." So he comes over. He's looking underneath, and I said, "What is that up there?" And he said, "Oh, don't touch that." Like, what is it? And he said, "That's the bone of a saint." Like, what? And he says, "Yeah, every Catholic church gets a bone of a saint inside their new altar." I'm like, "Oh,
Not a
okay.
boner, just a bone, right?
Just a bone, just a bone, or
Oh,
bones."
okay. You
So then,
scared me there for a minute.
no, none of that going on in my life, thank God. Even though I went to an all boys Catholic Jesuit high school, I never saw that. I guess I wasn't good looking enough or something. But
Well,
I've
good.
heard
Now I don't have to ask you that question.
well, I've heard other priests that were my teachers ended up getting caught or in trouble.
You know, Sam Tripoli had a very experience. You know who Sam is,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
He had a very similar experience in his life, very similar life to you. And he thinks the reason why he didn't have any problem with the priest is because he's a grower, not a shower. So he thinks that really helped him out.
Oh God,
Saved him.
I think I know the reason why. The reason why is because they prey on fatherless children. Some way that they can get in and be like for me, I had a good family upbringing. I mean, they weren't very loving to each other, but as far as outward appearance, and they were both there for me. My mom and dad were there for me. So people like that are tough to compromise. But everybody I've heard, because I've heard of a couple people that I even knew, grew up with, that were taken by either some pedophile or something, and usually they didn't have a father. I had this baseball coach. He coached me for 3 years in a row. The city loved him. He was a good guy. And we should have had questions. Now looking back, you're like, wait, this guy didn't have any kids. Why is he coaching 12-year-old baseball? But at the time, everyone just thought he's a good guy, likes to play baseball, likes to coach baseball. And he would show up. We would show up at practice, and he was always there with this one other kid that we kind of learned, like, oh, he usually drives him to practice and drives him home because his mom works and he's a single mom. Well, come to find out, that guy's in jail now for life. And I guarantee you that he messed with that boy who he brought, because that's it's called what they call grooming, right? So I think that when priests work with these altar boys, they can get an idea of their family life. Are they struggling? What kind of mindset do they have? And I think I was just too much of a it just wouldn't have never worked with me. I mean, it's just, even any kind of grooming or something, I just would have immediately ran to my parents screaming. I mean, I just would have, I was too alert for that. So I think that's why. But so years later, when I got into the truth and I started looking into Illuminati and things like that, I'm listening to, I don't know if you ever heard of Savali. She's a Illuminati defector, right?
I've heard of her.
She's in an interview, she's talking, and she's talking about these seances that they used to do underneath the Vatican. And she said, and we would sacrifice babies and then crush their bones and then ship them to the new churches. And somebody's like, what do you mean? She says, oh, well, they would take these babies' bones after they sacrificed it to Satan, and they would mail it to the new Catholic churches to put into their new altars. So then I was
there's your slide door again.
It's a slide door. So I was thinking, so that's not a bone of a saint. That's probably a bone of a child that's been sacrificed to Satan.
Wow.
I wouldn't put it past the Catholic Church. They are terrible, right? I mean, in so many ways.
It all comes back. It all comes full circle to something that we really can't talk about on YouTube. So we probably ought to think about.
I agree.
But
what channel are you on YouTube, Brooke? I have to share the link. Are you on your Watchtower?
I have two. The one I'm suspended from for 2 weeks. So
I'll just do Rockfin. If we're going to Rockfin, I'll just do it over there.
Yeah, and it's my second strike. So I'm on my ex-evangelical hour.
Okay.
And my Flee the Watchtower.
I'll just
have you ever known anybody that was a Jehovah's Witness?
Yes, but not anymore. I mean, this is a long time ago. So I've seen you kind of deal with them. What's your feeling on them?
It's very unique because these are people that generally see sort of like we did. Boy, this just doesn't add up with Catholicism, doesn't add up with Protestantism. And then they have these guys come to their doors and they start talking about, oh, we just take the Bible literally. We don't do any of this nonsense. And it's very, very, I tried to join the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I didn't get through because I, came across, you know, kinks or chinks in the armor before I could get there. But it is very, people that want to study, it's I call it like a faux enlightenment. You jump over one fence from mainline Christianity, you jump over a fence, and then there's this other fence set up that's called the Watchtower. So you think you got free, but you really didn't. So you're just in another branch of Christianity. So a lot of these people are very studious, but then they say, oh, hey, I already got out of Christianity. So it's almost even harder to speak to them because, oh, they got out of Christianity. So they're even smarter than the ones that didn't get out of Christianity. But they're brilliant people, they're dedicated people, and I've had probably at least 50 people write me and say, Jeff, please talk about the Watchtower. I barely made it out. I know people that are still in there. So we're doing a whole channel dedicated to that.
Saw that you started. That's a good idea. And then the other one as well.
You're lagging.
Oh, sorry. The other one was ex-evangelical, right?
Ex-evangelical, right? Ex-evangelical hour.
Hour, yes. No, I just haven't known any that besides the ones that come to the door. And my wife laughed pretty hard the last one that came and they said, oh, we want to talk about it. I'm like, oh, you guys read the Bible? Like, yes. And I said, did you know that the earth doesn't move and that the earth's flat? They're like, well, each person can believe what they. I just wanted to get out of here at that point, so I can turn the tables on them.
I'm going to go ahead and thank everybody on the Ex-Evangelical Hour and on Flee the Watchtower. Thank you for being here. We're going to go ahead and leave those channels now. We'll put up some special content for you specifically, and we'll do that pretty quickly. But now we are going to go ahead and leave those channels.